Welcome to the New Life Church Letchworth podcast, where faith meets everyday life and hope is always within reach. We're so glad you're here. Each week we gather to grow, to learn, and to be inspired. And whether you're part of our church family or listening from afar, this space is for you. A place to be encouraged, challenged, and reminded that with Jesus, there was always a new beginning. So get ready, open your heart, lean in, and together let's discover a life worth living.
Morning again. Oh, awesome. Hey, have you ever noticed, you probably have noticed this, but have you noticed in the West how obsessed we are with self? And this is particularly a Western culture thing, or it's more dominant in a Western culture. Have you ever noticed the obsession with self? It's like the most important thing in my life is ultimately me, right? That's the way it works, right? The most important, you know this because you've had relationships that haven't worked. Because somebody that you started a relationship with or started working with, whether it was romantically or maybe it was just in the office, like, you know, it didn't work because that individual, he or she, was so obsessed with themselves. You know, it's like, we know this is true. And we are, as a culture, a society, maybe we are just so obsessed. And there's this emphasis on self. And what I mean by that is we believe that we're separate and individual units. We're autonomous, self-reliant, unique, competitive, and independent. This is what we value. This is what the Western society, Western culture values. Now where this is, this is true, but what happens is this gives a pressure on self. So when you have an emphasis on self, it increases a pressure on self. Here's what I mean by that. You have to solve all your own problems. You've got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You've got to hide your weaknesses. You have to take responsibility for your own well-being. Okay. What we do is we value then or honor more than other people the self-made man or the self-made woman. We put them on pedestals as heroes, don't we? We raise them up as examples to sort of live by, if you like. We celebrate self-esteem and self-confidence and self-sufficiency. We admire and value and put honor in those who just hold it all together. And even subconsciously, or maybe not subconsciously, sometimes we look down on others who seem to not be able to hold it all together. And it happens in our workplaces, it happens in our schools, in our colleges, our relationships. And let's be honest, it happens sometimes in church community. That we somehow confuse being able to function and prove ourselves as greater value than those who don't. And so we're just kind of challenging some of these things because culture tells us these things. Culture tells us this. This is a voice in culture. Our culture tells us, do what makes you happy. Live your truth. You do you. Okay, you do you. Get yours while you can. Look out for number one. If it feels good and doesn't hurt anybody, then, hey, fill your boots. You go for it. It's your right. You deserve it. You need it. Yeah, you. You might work with people who think this way, right? You do you. I mean, all sounds so empowering in some ways. I mean, people tell you these things, this kind of sound like empowering, but actually here's the catch, or here's the kicker. Like, when life gets hard, the obsession with self turns even more inward and more toxic because you put more and more pressure on yourself and you believe that you have to be your own hero. Everything is now on you. The problem is you. You have a fault. You have a mistake. You have a whatever. And you put so much pressure on yourself to fix everything. And you can't tell people that you're struggling. It's like somehow we can reach the place where we are absolutely drowning in debt. And by the time we raise that white flag, it's too late. It's like we're so swamped by financial difficulties that if only we'd had enough vulnerability to tell somebody sooner, we wouldn't have got so deep in the hole that we're in. Or maybe in our relationships, by the time someone comes and says, I need some help with my marriage, it's like, where do we start? You should have come years ago. Not when it's already in tatters. It's because we put so much pressure on ourselves that we have to fix it ourselves, and we can't let people see what we're struggling with. And that's not cool, right? I mean, that's hard. And you think you should work more, earn more, perform more, do whatever. You just got to strive harder to make it work better, and then maybe you won't be, falling apart in that way. Okay, little caveat. You do need some self-reliance. I do not want to help you go to the toilet, okay? Yeah? So, yeah, I love you all, but please, there are limits to our relationship, okay? That's one of them, right? Okay, everyone who's got a child, and as a parent, of course you want your child at some point to grow up and learn how to do things for themselves, okay? Yeah, so let's just be honest. We do need a little bit of self-reliance, a little bit of self-sufficiency, a bit of self-energy. The danger is when that turns the pressure on ourselves having to sort everything out for ourselves. Okay, so little caveat there. But my challenge this morning is, as we look at this counterculture, how Jesus didn't call us to fit in, but he called us to break the mold. How do we live as followers of Jesus in a way that is countercultural? How do we break the mold? And so what I want to push against is where the pendulum has swung so far over that the self-reliance has turned into self-pressure, everything. I just wonder if we pushed it too far. Now, research even shows us that there's challenges with this. So research shows us that in a strongly individualistic cultures, some cultures are community cultures. Yeah, or more sharing cultures. But in the West especially, Western culture, we are individualistic. So in strongly individualistic cultures, people experience more stress, less support, and less pro-social behavior. And what psychologists mean by pro-social behavior is knowing when to say, I need help, I'm struggling, I can't do it on my own. So that's pro-social behavior. So research, okay, even moving away from, let's say for a moment, maybe you're not a follower of Jesus yet, but let's move the Jesus bit to the side. And even popular research, studies tell us that the more individualistic we are, the more stress we have, the more difficulties we carry, and the less pro-social behaviors we demonstrate. It's cool. Even the psychologists are backing up the stuff that Jesus was teaching us years and years ago. But we wonder, is there another way to live? Is there another way to go about things? And so what we're doing in this series is diving back in to the early church. Okay, you might not be a follower of Jesus yet. You might be curious. You might be thinking okay, what does the early church have to say to me? 2,000 years ago, how relevant is that going to be to our culture? Right? It's and that's a fair enough question, and that's a good enough question. So let's go there, right? Let's find out. Let's discover. Now, we say this often, but it's helpful to know that the Bible, although is sold as one book, it's actually 66 books. You need to think of it like a library, and that library is a collection of books. And in those collection of books, we have histories, we have poetry, we have records of things that took place, we have songs, we have romance, we have adventures, we have eyewitness accounts of the life of Jesus, and you have eyewitness accounts of the early church, records of the early church. And all of those 66 books are put into one book called the Bible. And in the New Testament, we have the record, if you like, which is incredible that we still have it, the record of when the church started. These are written just years after Jesus was on earth. And these letters are written to early churches. And so they give us this unique perspective, this unique record. And last week we looked at a guy named Paul, formerly Saul. And he was a Jewish rabbi. He was a Pharisee, which meant he thought he was better than everybody else. But also the Pharisees were those who determined what was clean and unclean. And he was one of those people. And he devoted his life to the law and the traditions of Israel. And he viewed Jesus' followers as degenerates and just the enemy, effectively. And he pursued them to the point of destroying them and trying to kill them. And if you missed it, go back online, please check out the YouTube channel and you can catch up on the message. So this is a brief recap. But Paul, who was called Saul then, formerly Saul, had this incredible encounter with Jesus, which changed his life. And he went from the one who was building the walls and creating division to then being the one to unifying and bringing healing and planting Christian communities all around the world. Now, if you are a follower of Jesus or not, here's why Paul is incredibly important for you to look at. Sociologists, historians, archaeologists agree that Paul was a real person who really lived. There's enough evidence out there to say Paul was a real person. We not only have the letters that he wrote, we have the places he visited. There are stuff all around the Mediterranean you can visit today, and there's records of this guy that still lived, Paul. And Paul was not a Jesus follower. He was a Jesus cynic. And he didn't believe any of this stuff. But over time, he had a transformation. So maybe for you, Paul is the kind of person that you should investigate and read about. Okay, maybe Jesus is too big of a step for you. But look at what Paul did and look at the journey that Paul went on and discover how Paul's life changed. So again, that was like a little aside, but we can trust what Paul says. And Paul, as he wrote to the early churches, he wrote these letters to Christian communities. He traveled around the Mediterranean, and this group of people here, they became followers of Jesus, and they formed these little pockets, these little communities. And little communities, we call them now churches, but they were gatherings. The early word mean, gathering of people. So he's all these little gatherings of people, and he would write them letters because they would ask him questions. They'd need some help with things, and he was sort of helping them. He's advising them and instructing them. And so he wrote all these letters. And those letters form primarily the New Testament, which is the second half of the library called the Bible. And Paul wrote a lot of those letters. And the thing we want to look at today is how the early church had a radically different counter-cultural view of community, belonging, family, all that stuff. Now, the early churches, we have to look at the context. A little bit of history lesson. The context was they had Jews and then Gentiles. Now, what that means is you've got the Jews and everybody else. So originally, or first, Jesus came to the Jewish people. They were the people that were actually longing for a Messiah, and they thought he was coming just for them. And the Jews thought everybody else was not in on it. Okay, they were the outsiders. They were excluded. They were not part of this plan, not part of the kingdom, not part of God's agenda. They weren't part of it at all. So you had these two groups of people. Okay? Now, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but if you get two groups of people together who are different in everything they do, there might be some problems, right? Okay, you might have a boyfriend or girlfriend who's from the same culture as you, and you still have problems, okay? So just imagine two groups of people. Their entire worldview, their entire history is different and even opposed to the other. It's not just different, okay? They're like anti one another. This is the environment the early church was birthed in. And when they write in the early church these letters, when he talks about the Jews and the Gentiles, it's an easy way to just remind people of these two groups of people. And we've got two sides of the room today. So we've got the Jewish people and we've got everybody else, okay? So we've got a visual aid going on in the room. There's only sort of two categories, of course. Now, the Jews had strict dietary laws, certain things you could and couldn't eat. They had certain days you had to do. They believed you had to circumcise your baby boy at 8 days. These are things they had to do. They believed that they couldn't get away from. And so if you think of categorizing it, you've got Jewish were chosen, clean, and holy, and the Gentiles were rejected, unclean, and unholy. Totally unholy. You could look down on one another, and that was okay. You could avoid one another, that was okay. Culturally, it was okay. You could despise the other, that was okay. You could mistreat the other. That was culturally okay. There's nothing wrong with it. Culturally, you were allowed to do these things. You could give a job to somebody who's part of your tribe, not their tribe, and that was okay. You could intentionally avoid, persecute, put hindrances in the way of the other. That's totally okay. Because they were not the chosen people. They were, right? Okay. Culturally, it was okay. And then all of a sudden, you get everybody together in one room. And that's crazy. I just sort of think it's hard to understand in our minds how radically different this approach to the New Testament, this approach to culture was in the New Testament. All of a sudden, Jesus died for everyone, and then he gathers this group of people, and it's so different. Just think about this: like, how do you cater for an event? Like, I mean, sausage rolls or not? I mean, just think about it. What day do we do it on? Hey guys, we're all meeting on Saturday. Oh yeah, sorry, you guys can't do anything on Saturday, right? We're gonna do baby dedications. Like, I mean, just think about the details, okay? Okay, these are real people who lived in real cultural settings doing real stuff. And how do you do this? How do you become a community when this is the sort of, challenges? What do we do? How do we pray? How do we respond to God and all this kind of stuff? And it's incredibly challenging. And let's just be honest, the easy solution would have been to make 2 churches. Okay, that would just be so much easier, wouldn't it? So this side of the room is now the first church of the Christian Redeemed Jewish gathering. I've just made it up, right? And then this side of the room, let's just make you the first church of the sanctified Gentiles or something. I mean, wouldn't it have been so much easier to enforce the separation and just maintain differences? That just would have been so much easier. However, Paul teaches the early church that there's a better way to live and that they can go against the cultural norms of the day, because Jesus' followers are not called to fit in, they're called to break the mold. And this is what he writes. This is what he writes to this group in Ephesians. He says to this church in Ephesus, you can visit it today, by the way. Go to Ephesus and see where these things happened. So he writes them, said, hey, remember you Gentiles? You guys over here? You used to be, remember what they called you? Outsiders. You were the uncircumcised heathen, yeah? Hey, in those days, you were living apart. You were excluded from citizenship. You were without hope. I mean, that's pretty, that's pretty direct, right? I mean, one thing you can trust is Paul's honest. So, ouch, that's a big deal. Okay, he's being honest and naming the situation as it is. Hey, don't you remember? Uncircumcised heathens. That's what you guys were known as, right? And then it's like, but, this is a big but. You got to love big buts in the Bible. But now, you have been united with Jesus. You who were once far away, who's he talking to? The uncircumcised heathens, the outsiders. You who were far away have now been brought near. Jesus himself brought peace, uniting the Jews and the Gentiles into one people. How in the world did he do that? Because that's impossible to do. Oh, he did it through the impossible, through his life, his death on the cross. Yeah, he did it through the powerful, unexpected means of giving his life, dying on the cross and coming back to life. He did it through his death on the cross. And through his death on the cross, and Paul uses this incredible word, destroyed the wall of hostility between us. He didn't just push it aside. He didn't just sort of lower it a little bit. He didn't just sort of accommodate everybody's differences. He took a sledgehammer to the wall and he blew the thing up. He destroyed. Look it up in the Greek. It means destroyed, right? Obliterated. Paul is pushing the new early church into a radically different way of living and being as followers of Jesus. It is huge. He carries on. He made peace by creating in himself one new people from the two groups. So we got people on this side and people on this side. Oh yeah, maybe it was like that. In himself. Everybody over here. Everybody over here. And he pulls them together in himself to make one new body, one new group. And as one body, Jesus reconciled both groups through the cross. And our hostility towards one another is put to death. This is like harsh, this is graphic stuff, isn't it? Destroying, death. So are you saying, Paul, that Jesus believed in this so much so that he gave his life for it? Are you saying he believed in it so much so that it was painful and difficult and it cost him something? Yeah. And the thing is, you know this is true. Because whenever you have tried to love somebody from the other side of the room, it's hard to do. It hurts, doesn't it? It's costly. And in that moment, we get a taste, just a taste of what it cost Jesus to do, to make us one. He's destroyed it. Now you Gentiles. It goes back to this group they started off talking about before. Now you Gentiles, you uncircumcised heathens, you outsiders, scumbags, whatever, you Gentiles are no longer strangers or foreigners. You are citizens along with all of God's people and members of God's family. Now, to the Jewish people, to hear the language, a citizen and a member of God's family means you have been brought into something that they thought was just for them for thousands of years. Okay? So there was this history the Jewish people had. All the way back. We are the children of Abraham. We go all the way back. This is our family. This is our family line. We are Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is what they would believe and say, and this is our family. You're not part of our family. And Paul is saying to you guys on this side of the room, hang on a minute. They're not just welcomed in. They're not just tolerated. They're not just allowed to be here. They're not just sort of like accommodated and, we'll get to hang out a little bit. No, they're more than that. They're part of the family. They are part of the family. And if you don't like it, you got to take it up with Jesus. And it cost him everything to make this happen. We read these verses and they're kind of easy verses and we just skim through them. We sometimes don't put in the perspective of what's actually going on culturally. These two groups hated one another. And it was okay to hate each other, yeah? And he's making it so clear. I mean, how much more explicit could he make it? Two sides are now one family. Okay, so maybe Paul just said this once. He just did this to this church in Ephesus. But listen to what he says to this church in Galatia. We're going to just cherry pick a few verses. And there's loads of them that Paul writes about stuff. In Galatians, he says this: there's neither Jew nor Greek, slave or free, male or female. You are all one in Christ. Sociologists recognize, and historians recognize, this is like the first ever equality statement anywhere in history. At a time when it wasn't expected or merited or wanted. We value these kind of equality things in our own world, don't we? But thousands of years ago, this is the first example in history of equality. And it comes from a follower of Jesus telling the early church how they are supposed to live. It's crazy. Now, is he saying that you're not, he isn't saying that you lose your ethnicity. Okay? He isn't saying that you lose your social, maybe slaves and free who were, employed and whatever, how you want to define that. And then also, you don't lose the fact that you're a male and a female. You don't lose those things. It just means that those things will no longer define you or divide you. That's what he's saying. So, of course, you're still a Jewish person by ethnicity. And, of course, you are still everything else, whatever the other else was, because Gentile just meant everything else who wasn't Jewish, right? So you don't lose your nationality, your ethnicity. You don't lose the fact that you might be wealthy or you might not be wealthy. You might be a man, you might be a woman. It doesn't mean that you lose those identifying markers. It means that those things do not define you or divide you. That's what Paul's saying. You don't sort of like become some soup and lose, we turn into like this gray mushroom blah or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, we don't lose what we are. What it means is, I don't judge you by the fact that you're not like me. I don't judge you that you're different to my nationality, etc. He's saying those things do not divide you or define you anymore. This is really what he's saying. And this isn't just a nice idea. It is so hard, right? It is so challenging and messy. And we're not going to be able to go into it today. But if you would like to read about this more, read in Romans, last part of Romans chapters 12 to sort of 16. And Paul writes to people and he's like, hey, you guys are asking like what you should eat and when you should meet and what you should do. I mean, he's going really practical because it's groups of people that don't know how to work this stuff out. So check it out. And this guy, Paul, who was once a man of rules and walls, did something so radical because he began calling one another brother and sister. And this is so important. See, we can just say that we're family. But at some point, unless you begin to relate with that person, you don't let them become your brother or your sister. It's easy to say, oh, we're part of God's family. But until we begin to walk life together, you don't know me as a brother. I don't know you as a brother. I don't know you as a sister. And this radical community used language to help wrestle with and understand and describe to the world what it meant to be a new follower of Jesus. This was a radical, countercultural community. You just imagine the early church. And here you are. You've got your own business. And it was fine years ago to not let any of these other people come and enter the doors of your business. But all of a sudden, you've started doing something weird. Here you are selling your pomegranates and your mangoes or whatever. And then somebody walks by who you know from your church, your Christian community. You come out from behind your stall. Brother! You walk over to them. You give them a big hug. And it comes out, oh, you've got to try. I've just got these mangoes in. These are the most incredible, sweet, fresh mangoes you have ever. I'll tell you what. Oh, come on, you've got to, come on. He's got mango juice running down his face, and you offer it to them. Everyone else is standing there thinking, wait, what in the world has just happened? Why are you sharing food with someone who's unclean? Why are you embracing someone who's unclean? Why are you calling someone who's unclean your brother and not a dog? The early church, they had to live out this in a way that was so countercultural. Okay, this is not just tame texts. I hope you can catch the radicalness of what in the world is going on here. These are not just neutral words on a page. These are people's lives, and they're living it out, they're working it out, they're trying to discover what it really means. And then Paul sort of helps describe it in another way. He talks about us being family, and then he just pushes it even more. And in Romans, he says this, we are now, he talks about us being one person, he says each of us has one body with many parts. That's obvious. Yeah. And not all parts have the same function. Again, that's obvious. You cannot play football with your hands unless you're Diego Maradona. Anyway, right, not all parts have the same function. But in Christ, we, insiders and outsiders, clean and unclean, we who formerly were enemies, we, though we are many, from all different histories, heartaches and hang-ups, now form one body. And each part belongs to the other. Doesn't mean ownership. Okay? You don't own. Okay, what a violation of someone's sacred, who they are. We don't own people, okay? This isn't endorsed to abuse. You belong, meaning it's so good to have you here. We were incomplete until you arrived. I couldn't think about doing life without you in my life. You belong. I want to share life with you. My joys, my sorrows, my ups and downs, my triumphs, my tragedies. We are one. We belong. Paul writes elsewhere that when one part of the body hurts, everybody hurts. Everybody hurts. Okay? If you needed any sort of indication that it was never supposed to be a heavy-handed, toxic relationship setup, he's not talking about that. We all hurt. If you're hurting, we all hurt, because that's what it means. Because when you're a body, when you're a family, when you're human body, when you stub your toe, you feel it everywhere. That's what your nervous system does. And when one part of our body hurts, we all hurt. This is what Paul's talking about. This is radical. Together, you are Christ's body, and each of you is part of it. This is so risky. This is so radical. It honestly is so different. And Paul risked everything, his old way of life, to see this happen. He wrote this in most, if not all of his letters that he wrote to the early churches. This thread, this concept comes through to most people. And then here's how it happened. The early church didn't just believe differently. And here's where we're going to get a bit personal. So beliefs don't change the world. Okay? They didn't just believe differently. They lived differently. Because if you don't put it into action and practice, your beliefs mean nothing. So he didn't gather people who would be attenders. Jesus gathered people who would be followers, who would go where he goes, live like he lives, love like he loves. Followers. To follow someone, you have to move. You have to go. You have to do. And following Jesus, if you're a follower of Jesus yet or not, following Jesus is the most adventurous, radical, extreme thing you can give your life to. And I don't mean radical like fundamentalist. I mean like radical like it's just countercultural to everything else. Because you have to live and love differently. If you don't want that, fine, walk away from Jesus. But if you're willing to give your life to something greater than yourself, follow Jesus. It's the best thing to do. Yeah? And Paul gets so practical. They carried each other's burdens. They carried one another like family. The early church changed their world because they put it into action and practice. Otherwise, why would the world have changed? Okay? The Rise of Christianity, it's a book by a guy named Rodney Stark, sociologist. And he looks at why did some weird, small sect in the Middle East become the dominating world philosophy, world religion? And he looks at it as a sociologist, how did it affect sociology? And the whole section of the book is devoted to the fact that for some reason, the early church lived differently than the rest of the world. And they cared for people differently than the rest of the world. And maybe you know this already, but caring for orphans, caring for widows, caring for those who are outcasts in society. The stuff that we want our governments to do now is rooted in the heart of Jesus because it started in the early church, somehow putting into practice what it meant to be a Jesus follower. And sociologists say that one of the greatest reasons that the Christianity faith spread is because of the way they cared for and loved one another. And didn't Jesus say that? The world will know that you are my followers or disciples. How? Because of the way you love one another. Not just think about it. Not just believe it. How you do it. Practice. Action. We've got to put it into practice. So, you need other people in your life. I need other people in my life. And that's not just people who are like me. And the ones I need in my life might actually be the ones that I used to avoid. I need people in my life. And now, as I was changing these notes again last night, and the reason I was changing them, and I don't mean to be political slightly here, but my news feed just kept coming up telling me about protesters all around the country. I'm not trying to take sides. I'm just saying, is this the heart of Jesus? Now more than ever, followers of Jesus somehow need to live and love differently. We somehow need to model something else. It's like, and okay, fine. I don't look like the people that they're protesting against, but some of my brothers and sisters do. And if one part hurts, we all hurt, right? I just think now more than ever, how do we care for one another? Come on, you're messing with the family. Brother and sister. It's not just a word. It's blood, right? I mean, come on. So now more than ever, I wrote, we need to live as a new community. How would our brothers and sisters with different skin color feel than us? And what is our response? How do we break the mold? So here's 3 challenges for us as we get ready to close. Here's 3 challenges for how we break the mold. Hey, we got to stop trying to do it all on our own. We have to learn to stop. And we have to start seeing others as brothers and sisters. I know that's an emotive word, because some of our brothers and sisters might not have been the best brothers and sisters, right? I'm not saying this is easy, but we have to try to view one another, brother and sister. That our first filter, can it be family, please? And I know that's, again, an emotive word, and it comes with lots of baggage. I understand that. And I'm not trying to trigger anything in you if those words flag up other things in your heart. But I'm using it because Paul used it. I'm trying to use it the way he used it. Let's be the family that Jesus brought together through his death and resurrection. And let's seize opportunities to connect. So we got to stop trying to do it all on our own. We have to start seeing one another as brothers and sisters, and we have to seize the opportunity. Do something about the opportunity to connect. And here's why. Church will only feel like church. Community will only feel like community through relationship. Only through relationship. If you don't connect relationally, you will never feel connected. You'll only be an attender. And if you're not connected relationally, it'll be easier for you to drift away. And I, honest to God, don't want you to drift away from Jesus. But it's easy to drift when you don't miss anybody and they don't miss you. And if we just attend, not intentionally connect and build relationship, it's so much easier to drift. I don't want to step on your toes. I want to be practical. Relationships only work when you invest in relationships. That's how it happens. When you get to know one another, walk with one another, spend time with one another. That's the way relationships work. And it's the same thing within church. Church community is the same thing. It's no different. We're humans who need to relate to one another. There's some practical ways. I want you to seize the opportunity. We're going to wrap up in just a moment, and you can look at the stuff on the table at the back. You can find out about the small groups. Maybe you don't have the capacity in your life because we're all busy to join a small group. Okay, nobody says I'm free every Tuesday night, right? We just have to make it happen. Or maybe you need to join a team. Come along, figure out how you can get stuck in and just hang out with some people and start doing something. Just find out, take some steps, what you can do. Hey, come to the men's breakfast. 2 Saturdays. Come to the men's breakfast. Seize the opportunity to come along. Just have a coffee if you don't want to have all of the fried food. I'm sure somebody else will eat it for you. No. I don't want you to feel obligated. I want these to be opportunities. We believe in connecting. So with our children, for example, what we say with our young people, we want them to grow in friendship and faith. Why do we say friendship and faith? Because we believe relationships are important. And we have to start when they're young. Because our kids are going to grow up into a world which could be even more fractured than the world that we live in now. And they are going to need brothers and sisters who walk with them through every season of their life, every tragedy and every triumph. We want them to grow in friendship and faith. That's why our small groups to be places of safety and strength, where we can really grow in friendship and relationship with one another. Cool. By the way, ladies' breakfast is in October, so we haven't forgotten you ladies who want to also go out for a Friday. And we got lots of stuff coming up for Christmas as well. But let me just stop there. We've gone a little bit longer. I'm going to just pray for us, and then we'll wrap up. Thank you. Thank you, Jesus. God, I just thank you for everybody here this morning. Thank you that we can learn to be a totally different counter-cultural community. God, help us to open our hearts and view others as brother and sister. God, thank you for this radical way of living that you've shown us. Thank you for who you are. And I just pray for everyone here, whether they're near to you or whether they feel far from you. You would be with each and every one and bless them. Let them know how much they are loved and how you have designed a community for them to feel part of. In your wonderful, gracious name we pray. Amen. Awesome. If you have any questions, please feel free to, let's chat. Let's pick each other's brains. If you've got little kids, you don't need to collect them yet. Wait till 12 o'clock so you got a little bit of time to have another drink or have a look at the tables. If you have any questions about New Life Church, check out the welcome table at the back, and we are here to help you. Next week, we will be carrying on our series. So thank you very much. Cheers.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's message. We hope you found it encouraging. Remember, no matter where you are on your faith journey, you are never alone. God is with you, and we are here for you too. If this message spoke to you, please share it with a friend, and don't forget to connect with us online or in person. You can find out more about New Life Church at nlcletchworth.co.uk. We'd love to see you soon. Until next time, keep walking in faith, living in hope, and loving like Jesus.